everybody. How about we get going?
I've enjoyed it for 30 years.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. You didn't give a name tag yet.
No, there was a line.
There's too much line there.
Just
Okay.
call me the guy with the...
Are you the one doing the presentation today?
I will.
Thank you for coming. This is the IMC Club at IA meeting, and this is actually a membership club. So there are a lot of members in here who have paid their dues. They have to come see me every month. That's dues enough, isn't it, Bob?
Big dues.
Yeah, so, but in any case, what we like to do...
That's not dues, that's penance.
Yeah. We like to open up the meetings about twice a year so that you guys can get a flavor for what we do at this particular IMC club. So I will be explaining a little bit more about what this thing is all about. We have a great time. When I have bribed Bob enough, then he does this pizza thing. So that's kind of fun. Thank you, Bob, for that tonight. Did everybody get a piece in their fill? Good. Excellent. We usually start off with a video, and Chuck hasn't seen this, but this is kind of interesting. I took this video. I live up now near Buena Vista, and I was looking at this little app, and I saw this 182 kind of tooling around, and so I captured it as he was flying around the collegiate peaks. Check this out. Anybody have an idea of what this app is?
Google Earth.
No. Good guess, though.
Radar 24.
Yeah. Yeah, no, the young guy in the crowd would know.
What's that?
Flight Radar 24. Look at this. Now we've got a cockpit view. So up here, oop, I got to remember not to do that. When you, this button here is the cockpit view. And this button, that's the aircraft, that's sort of the chase plane view. So this guy's flying around Mount Harvard. Really cool. Flight Radar 24 is one of the scariest apps I think I know because of this. And you know, this ADS-B stuff, now you're getting real-time look at where the aircraft are and things. So this is while he was really going, this is looking down the valley towards Salida. And the fact that you can look at that view is just awesome.
Do they have a summertime version?
Yeah, I imagine, well, the mountains have a heck of a lot more snow on them right now than shown there, but really cool app. So if you go in there, and it's kind of like FlightAware. It's just got this ADS-B feed now and these features, and you can get an iPad app. This was their website. So kind of fun stuff. So again, welcome to the IMC Club at IA. This is kind of a standard agenda. We'll won't do a bunch of introductions. I'm going to do a couple, but and we'll talk about things that are new kind of in the aviation business, and then a very special presentation today. A lot of times we'll work with scenarios by IMC Club, which is part of the EAA now, or pilot workshops. If you guys have ever heard of that, that's an awesome thing to be involved in. And then I'll give you, after we go through the scenario, I'll kind of let you know more about this IMC Club. First thing is there are two leaders here. Chuck is the big leader, right? He's the CFII leader, and then I kind of help run the meetings and do admin stuff and send emails out to the members. So both of us are involved with the IMC Club, running it here. IMC Club is part of the EAA, and it's part of a larger organization with, I think, over 100 clubs now in just about every state and a couple of countries. So that's kind of neat. This is all you guys, sort of. These are people that signed up either via our website or by the FAA Safety Wings program. So that reminds me, I'll start this around. Every one of our meetings qualifies for FAA Safety Wings program credit. So if you signed up as a guest, you'll be on the second page. Our members are on the first page, just initial. If you're a guest, please make sure I have your phone number and proper email address so that I can give you credit for being here. So thanks again for coming. This is a great list, and love having everybody here. Some new developments going on. How about Basic Med? Everybody's heard of Basic Med? Right? Anybody here planning to take advantage of it? Right? How would you take advantage of it? So May 1st is when it's active, and there are hoops that you need to jump through, things that you will need to maintain. So if you go to the AOPA website, you can get all kinds of information on what Basic Med does. But in essence, it's like what has been effective for the sport pilot license, right? You can now fly without a third-class medical in an aircraft up to 6,000 pounds, 6 seats, VFR and IFR up to flight level 180, and self-certified. So hopefully I'll have a little more information and opinion written by an AME who is actually a member here, kind of giving a little nuance from that particular perspective. Now I've got a couple of really exciting things. And the first thing is Independence Aviation was named the Cirrus Training Center of the Year for 2016. So why is this important? Well, because we're great, right? No. A couple of things. This is the first year it's ever been awarded by Cirrus.
Oh, wow.
So that's cool.
number one.
We're number one in more ways than one. And being a little bit jealous, those guys that were from IA, 2 of which are in the room, went and received the award, and guess what they got to do?
Flying
Fly the jet?
Fly the jet,
Oh, really?
the Vision jet. Was that fun? What'd you think?
It was okay. It's a good airplane.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
You know, that smile on your face and the, yeah, right. What'd you think, Chuck?
I thought it was everything they said it was going to be, and easy to transition from a piston to the jet.
Wow,
So it was fantastic.
that's gonna be fun. And has anybody on this field seen the one that's kind of based around here? Pretty fun, cool jet. So, it's not down there, is it?
I think they
yeah,
finished
they
with
pulled
it.
it. The second thing is just phenomenal, and that is Chuck Gensler was named the National 2017 CFI of the Year. So if you think his stuff is good, it is, and now the nation knows it. So congratulations, Chuck.
Thanks, Taylor.
All right, so we have a special program today. One of the things that we like to do is listen to our membership and say, hey, wouldn't it be cool to do this or that? And one of our members, Gary Higby, said, you got to look at this video and maybe this would be a great program to put on. And I looked at it and I thought, wow, absolutely. And so I'm going to turn this over to you to make the introduction, and then we'll just go ahead and watch the video, and however, if you can stop it in places and that, I'll do that. But, so,
All right,
Come
thank
on
you,
up.
Taylor.
So Mark works at a helicopter company down the street. I don't particularly know if we should say where.
Well, that's fine if you do.
And Mark is in flight safety, and he listened to all my stories when I was getting my private pilot's license, being that he graduated from Riddle down in Prescott. So I get to hear some of his good stories and some of the stuff that you should and shouldn't do as a pilot, and I took that out and put it into a 172 and did the same thing. So Mark's been my sounding board for the last 3.5, 4 years while I've been flying. So without further ado, Mr. Rusthoven.
All right.
So good evening, my name is Marc Rusthoven. I'm the Corporate Safety Manager at AirMethods. My primary function is to help facilitate the processing of our risk information through a program we have that's called SMS, our Safety Management Systems. We have a lot of data that we're processing, reports from pilots, programs like FOPLA that you'll see an example of here in just a bit, and also auditing information. And we take all that data, collect it, identify risk information, and take corrective action on it. But today we want to talk to you about one particular event that got discovered through our FOQA program. FOQA stands for Flight Operations Quality Assurance. This is where we're actually downloading data off of our airframes, reviewing it for certain parameter exceedances, and if it gets flagged by the system, we review it at the corporate office, send it to a group of pilot union members that review the data to determine is it a valid event, and if so, what type of corrective action needs to occur. This is a voluntary safety program that AirMethods participates in. It's not required at all. It's kind of above and beyond, but definitely supports our SMS initiatives to proactively identify our hazards and manage our risk. Today we're going to see a video. I'll tee it up for you guys a little bit. It's one of our bases down in Texas. Imagine you're a crew, a medical crew on a helicopter or ambulance. You've been sitting around. It's the last day of a 7-day shift, and you've had 0 calls the entire week. You're about ready to get off shift, and right before, a couple hours before you do, you get a phone call. We need a patient transport. This is North Texas. The weather there can change on a dime. Not quite as bad as it does here, but it can change pretty quickly. So you get a call. The pilot in command needs to make the determination about the weather, and they decide they are within the margin to go ahead and launch. And we'll cue it up there, watch the video, and give you some more information about the event and answer any questions you might have.
Aircraft are more technologically advanced today than they have ever been, and more detailed weather information is at our fingertips than ever before. Yet the rate of accidents in the helicopter and general aviation community remains relatively constant. One of the leading causes of accidents is inadvertent flight into instrument conditions, otherwise known as IMC. Unfortunately, such accidents are usually fatal. A basic search for these tragic accidents on the NTSB's Aviation Accident Database yields pages of results. Investigation reports reveal that many of the pilots involved in these accidents had thousands of hours of experience and training to prepare them to avoid or recover from such situations. Sometimes that is not enough. Denver Pletcher is a veteran air medical pilot with over 3,800 hours in both military and civilian helicopters, who, like many other pilots, thought his experience and good judgment could keep him and his crew safe. But one dark night, he found himself inadvertently flying into IMC in a helicopter that was not equipped for such conditions. The helicopter was, however, equipped with a light aircraft recording system that captured the entire flight, including the IMC encounter that nearly resulted in a tragic accident for Denver and his crew.
I'm here today to explain my side of what happened, and hopefully someone else will see maybe something out of this that'll keep them from getting into the situation I got myself in. I joined the Air Force in '71 and went to helicopter training school at Fort Walters and to Fort Rucker and on to in many different places in the Air Force. Our motto was that others may live. And I always took that to heart. I feel like I gave of myself to help someone else. I retired out of the Air Force in 2002 and started EMS until 2011.
In February of 2011, Denver was on his last shift of his scheduled duty week. Not much had happened that week. There wasn't a single flight. So when the flight request for a patient transport came in, Denver was eager to take the flight.
We got a call about 3 o'clock in the morning. I checked weather. Weather was no good because of the clouds. They asked us if we would just go, and we had an alternate landing spot. So we took off. We said, okay, let's go look and let's go see. And we got up. There's no way. I can't do this. Well, we called comms and we canceled and turned around and headed home. Well, half the way back, comms calls us up and says, can you maybe go to the alternate landing spot that was clear there, because we had flown over it on the way out and on the way back.
Denver and the crew made the decision to land at the alternate landing spot requested by the communications center. Denver knew the weather was clear there, as they had flown near the location on the way to the originally requested landing spot.
And we landed near a football stadium. The football stadium was just out the right door. There was this gymnasium building off to my left, and there was a light, a spotlight that was lighting the area out there. And I've been looking at that spotlight and thinking about it, kind of like, it's so dark behind it. It's just black. It's pitch black.
After several minutes sitting on the ground waiting for the patient to arrive, Denver noted low-level fog developing and asked the medical crew to keep an eye on the fog and haze forming around the nearby lights. Time was of the essence.
I said, look guys, if you see those lights and if they start hazing around them, we're out of here. We're going. So, okay, we got it.
While on the ground waiting, Denver called dispatch to find out how much longer it would be before the ambulance arrived with the patient. The crew was growing concerned about the developing fog.
They're telling me, yep, there's clothes around the lights. I said, okay, let's go. Get on board. We're leaving now. Because I could look west and I could see.
Without the patient on board, Denver had already lifted the helicopter into a hover for departure to the west back to base when they noticed the ambulance had finally arrived with the patient.
So I said, oh shoot, what are we going to do? Well, we can grab him and run, boss. I said, well, all right, grab him and run, but hurry. Well, 7 minutes later, we're ready to go. So I cranked up, full pitch, took off, and I turned around and headed west. All of a sudden, I don't know why, but my attitude indicators precessed a little bit. It just kind of dropped to one side. And I thought, oh, don't be messing with me now. And I know that I've got to have an attitude indicator to fly instruments, period. I know that's got to be there. Because I thought about going into it a little bit. So I reached up and pulled the cage, and it did reset. But I never looked at it again. And when I did that, we were in the soup. It just flopped right over the top of us like it was a blanket. I'm going west. I think I'm going west. I wasn't real sure at that moment. I'm in black, and I saw this light, and it looked so much like the light on the ground. So I'm thinking, this isn't right. I know there's these stanchions on my right side. If that's the light I think it is, there's a football field right there, and I'm going to run into those poles. I know I'm going to do it. I didn't look at my altitude. I didn't even think about it. So I moved left to get away from that so I could go and fly away from it.
As Denver struggled to understand his situation, the helicopter was in a steep climb, gaining altitude. Instead of turning to the left like he thought, Denver's inputs resulted in a dive back towards the ground, followed by other extreme maneuvers.
So the second time we come up, and there's that light again. I'm looking at it. Oh, shoot, I gotta get away from that light. So I did it again. Gotta try to get away from where I thought I was. And then all of a sudden, I'm sitting there thinking, what the heck is going on? What's wrong here? What's wrong with this picture? And it dawned on me, killed me. So I got on the attitude indicator, I leveled the wings out, I checked my power, I had my power in, it was going well. And I was turning the aircraft from, I think it was going north at the time, and I was turning, trying to get back to the west, because I knew it was clear out that direction. And on the gauges, we climbed up, popped out. Oh, it's great. it didn't dawn on me until the very next day that that light I saw was the moon. And it looked just like that light with all the black in behind it. And it just blew my mind.
Denver completed the mission and returned to base, but the perilous encounter that occurred that night continued to concern him and his crew.
Now it's ship change, almost. So I walk in, and our lead pilot's there ahead of me, and it's daylight's just come up on us. And I looked at him and said, "Boss, I think I screwed up." He said, "What do you mean?" And I tried to explain to him a little bit of it. He said, "Well, I think you did just fine. You're here. And you took your patient, you brought the aircraft home, you did good." I said, "No, there's more to this than I did good." "No, sir." He said, "Well, you're off shift, go home." The poor young guy and young gal that were my crew that night, they actually told the lead pilot, "We don't want to fly with him. Something's not right."
Following the incident, Denver's management chose to reevaluate his competency as a pilot. A company check airman evaluated Denver's overall competency, and specifically his inadvertent IMC recovery techniques. At the completion of this evaluation in a simulator, the check airman approved Denver to resume his flight duties. Denver's story isn't an isolated incident. Too often, pilots find themselves in unsafe situations. It's seldom due to a lack of basic piloting skills, but rather circumstances, human factors, and/or a lack of recent relevant training, which lead to poor decisions that can sometimes result in an undesirable outcome, or even worse, tragedy.
A lot of what ultimately the decisions are hinged upon when you take or don't take a flight are very subjective. We devise systems to help the pilot analyze all of these items like a risk assessment form. The interesting part is the pilot is often the least qualified person, not often, always the least qualified person to assess his or her ability to fly the machine safely.
I feel like I'm just like everybody else. I would have, and I did say, "I'm okay." Even regardless of this is my last night on my shift, I'm tired. The risk assessment was kind of out the door. It didn't really count in my mind because I'm there. I'm going to do this. It's my job. This is what I'm supposed to do.
Not in 32 years of being in this business has a pilot ever told me, "I can't do this." We, as an industry, must recognize and seek measures which can help the pilot maybe not be his own evaluator, but have other crew members be the evaluator of the pilot. Maybe it's dispatch which is the evaluator of the pilot. Or maybe it is a better risk assessment form. A risk assessment form which really does delve deeper into the pilot's safety of flight.
The risk assessment is a formalized effort by the pilot and/or organization to examine, quantify, and document the risks associated with a particular flight, and assist in the go, no-go decision to take a flight. The ability of a pilot or crew to turn down a flight for any safety reason, and there be no negative repercussions from their management, is a good indication that safety is the #1 goal in their company or organization.
When we turn down flights, we oftentimes review the circumstances surrounding that. But interestingly enough, I've never had to justify taking a flight. But that doesn't mean it was the right decision or the right flight. So we need to learn from the flights which are successful. Maybe it was just luck which made them successful. I am so impressed with Denver's honesty, integrity, and willingness to share his story, which it's not a story that I think most people would be comfortable sharing. We, as an industry, can learn so much from what occurred there that evening. If we fail to do that, we're missing an opportunity to improve our...
Oops.
It should be there because it helps us be honest with ourselves and take care of our machine.
Devices like the Vision 1000 allow us to review incidents like Denver's that none of us would ever know about. So for every accident that happens, there are probably hundreds of events like Denver's with this type of device in the future, we can know about that, understand the cause, fix that, and prevent that ultimate accident from happening.
If we seek to find a solution, we must first seek to understand the problem. To minimize the occurrence of future inadvertent IMC accidents and work toward eliminating them altogether, objective data must be analyzed to identify and understand the decision-making process and factors that lead to such accidents. That information then must be used to provide realistic and relevant scenario-based training to better prepare pilots and crews for the situation and decisions they will encounter. As with all pilots, the dream of flying never leaves. With Denver's story, he chose to retire early and walk away from his love of flying to deal with the uncertainties and concerns he had about his own safety. He wanted to share his story so that others may live.
So what do you guys think? Aside from painting Red Bull on the side of the helicopter, what could have been done to prevent this incident? And it's really just classified as a corporate incident. This really didn't make an NTSB qualification for incident or accident, but in my mind, this is 4 dead individuals we just didn't happen to have to scrape off the sidewalk. This is everything but the accident. So what we do through our focal programs is record the information, review what happened, try to figure out how to prevent it from happening in the future. Not only just internally, but this is a product that we produce in conjunction with Airbus, so we can share industry-wide. We show this video at several different conferences. It's shown to all our new hires on day 1 during their in-dock training, and we try to get this information out to anybody that'll listen. So correlations between a 135 on-demand helicopter air ambulance world and the type of flying you guys are doing. Are there any parallels?
Sometimes.
Absolutely.
Charity flying.
Right? Charity flying. What about the old get home-itis? You guys pick up on some of that? A little bit different take on it, right? It's our folks being mission-oriented.
Mission mindset.
Mission mindset, absolutely. Well, if we don't go there and transport this patient, who's going to? They're going to spend several hours transporting by ground. The patient might get injured. We have clinicians in the back that are geared towards providing patient care. We have pilots in the front that are single pilot geared towards getting the patient where they need to be. So a lot of mission focus there. What about the decision-making process? We are single pilot, but we do operate in a crew environment. So we have folks in the back that are at risk as well, and they have an equal say. We have a rule that says all to go, one to say no. Any crew member can say, you know what, let's put it on the ground. Let's not accept this transport. Let's stay home tonight. And that's the end of the discussion. It obviously wasn't used in this scenario, but did you guys tally up how many times it should have been? What about when they initially launched? How was the weather? Marginal, let's go take a look. Is that a good idea? Never? Safer to stay on the ground, right? They're flying back, they hit the weather wall they were expecting, they start turning back, they call our communication center and say, sorry guys, we can't take this one, we're heading back to base. What did the communication center say? Hold on guys, can you try going to that alternate landing zone? You just flew over, it's clear there, go ahead and take a look there. What did the crew do?
They took that suggestion.
They took the
They
bait.
let him make the decision. He couldn't see what was going on.
Absolutely, right? They got
A screen, but he wasn't in the cockpit.
exactly right. They got talked in to deviating from their plan, which is to go back to base, right? So they land at the alternate LZ. They're hanging out for, I forget exactly how long. And fog starts forming in. The weather's kind of catching up to them now. What do they decide to do as a crew? We're out of here, right? The second that happens, what do they see coming through the fog? The lights of the ambulance, right? What does the crew in the back say? The patient's right there. Let's grab him and run, boss. We can do this. Let's go. All right? What does the pilot say? Okay, but hurry. Again, they got talked in. They talked themselves into deviating from their original plan, which is to go back to base. Yes, ma'am.
I would say that was the bad decision. If you want to land in the alternate sky, it's clear, okay, fine, but now you've made a decision, okay, we cannot do this, we are going now.
Right.
Why did you make that decision if you're going to land back down?
Yep.
And it turns out they spent 7 minutes.
7 minutes.
And that may not sound like long, but
In a dynamic weather environment, how long is 7 minutes? It might have been the rest of their life, right?
yeah, so I don't mind that they changed their plan. But the fact is that the weather at that moment is enough that they said, no, we have gone to the edge of our envelope. They took off, oh, now it's not the engineer?
Right.
Which decision was wrong? One of those two decisions was wrong.
Right.
And I know which one I think it was.
Right. So you guys know when we talk about events like this, and we talk about causal factors and accident chains, it's usually never just one decision, right? So now we have two sort of decisions of one, instead of going all the way back to base, let's go to the alternate landing zone. And two, instead of staying at the alternate landing zone or leaving when we thought we should have, we've now talked ourselves into another trap of let's go ahead and load the patient. And in our world, 7 minutes isn't a long time to load a patient. That's about right. So,
It seemed to me, watching it, Denver's basic instrument scan wasn't very good.
right.
Well,
I mean,
admitted that.
there was a lot of instruments there that he wasn't watching.
He admitted that.
Absolutely.
He said
Yeah.
he didn't look at the
Yeah.
instruments.
So it's one thing to be instrument rated, right? It's a whole other thing to be instrument proficient. Do you think Denver was proficient? I'm not second guessing him, but
No.
there-
Well, once
there
his
might have been-
attitude indicator went out, he lost his faith in the instruments, and he tried to fly visually.
or even just that
And
distraction to
like you said,
re-cage it,
And he
right?
didn't even look at the alternative.
Absolutely
It didn't
right.
occur to him.
He got distracted, and then
I
it
mean,
flopped
once,
over him.
if you're gonna focus on those instruments, you gotta have 100% faith that they're giving you the right information. If they're not, it's like, your natural reaction is to look up and say, I gotta fly outside the airplane.
Do
Absolutely.
you know what altitude he was actually at when he saw the moon and thought it was that street light?
I don't recall. It's been a long time since I looked at the data.
I
in
saw
detail.
3,000 on the
Yeah.
altimeter at one time.
So it was
It was
pretty
going like
high.
this.
Yeah, there was a lot of gain and loss and a lot of maneuvering in those. That was right out of the aircraft recorder, so that's actual flight data.
Did AirMethods change any of their training because of this story?
Absolutely, yeah. Much more emphasis on the all to go, one to say no. This is now part of the training to understand for our new hire employees, maybe the new clinicians in the back. You might have an experienced clinician with a new clinician, and they might think, oh, it's normal to land at the alternate LZ. Oh, it's normal to wait and pick them up again. We want them to understand this is not our normal operation.
So does he carry an iPad in his bag just to check weather? Well, he had 7 minutes to figure something out.
Right. At this time, no. Now we do. We have electronic flight bags. They're not
Yeah.
official EFBs just yet. We're going through that certification process with the FAA, but we are working towards leveraging technology to help prevent these issues as well.
Yeah.
With all the decision-making that we're talking about, the bottom line is, the only way to prevent the incident, once you got to that point, would be to take the human out of the equation, because no matter how many hours you take, you can get disoriented.
Right.
He looked up, he thought he saw something that wasn't what he was looking at, and he was just, and at that point, it was more good luck than good management that he managed to hold on to.
Right. So we have an IFR certified, instrument certified pilot. This particular base, though, was not one of our IFR bases. So the only type of flying they do there is VFR flying. So proficiency definitely is a question.
So, Mark, I think the other thing to think about with medical transport, 2,500 hours minimum in type. So this wasn't like me flying around with 100 hours just knocking around with something to do. It's 2,500 hours plus military. A large section of the helicopter pilots there are ex-military, flying Kiowas and Apaches and
Anybody can get this.
high-end stuff, so anybody can get sucked in.
Yep. That's a very good takeaway. Thanks, Grant.
And I think, when I saw this video in his office, it made me breathe funny because I was watching him go up and dive back, and I'm like, ugh. Yeah.
I think one of my takeaways was the statement of having recent relevant currency in practice.
Absolutely.
I mean, you might have all the hours in the world in your logbook, and you may have just 12 months ago gone through flight safety and done a hell of a job, but that was 12 months ago.
Right. Yep.
And relevant experience.
Absolutely.
I think for me, it's just that, while he was on the ground thinking of the possibility to switch up instruments, and it felt like he got caught off guard. So, I think if I take off on a low ceiling, one of the first things I think about is make sure I'm prepared to switch to instruments.
Absolutely. I always put those what ifs in your head. Absolutely. Yeah, well
So,
said.
I mean, it's so easy to double,
Oh, absolutely.
double
Yeah.
in the rearview mirror.
Yeah.
Every one of the decisions, seems, okay, well, it's just the one, but to your point, it's one more. I mean, I'm pretty sure most people would say, oh, here comes the ambulance, I'll just put it right back down in 7 minutes.
Exactly. You look at each one independently, it's not.
Especially as many lives as you save. I mean, think about all the kids' lives you save transporting with 7 minutes.
Right.
It's so tough.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely don't mean to sit here and armchair quarterback their decision, but there are certainly some good takeaways we hammer home with our crews. And then for general aviation pilots, there's a lot of correlation between this is happening to a high-time military pilot that's, receives commercial training and frequency checks, those kind of things. It can happen to almost anybody. Yes, sir.
I think the big takeaway for me is how do we as pilots break that chain and make the right decision there?
Mm-hmm.
Because you can see the pressure and I got to get this job done.
Right.
And several times he had the ability to stop it, but he didn't.
Right.
And so, knowing he's going in instrument conditions, but his instrument, his attitude indicator goes haywire. Would he take off on a normal day in instrument conditions if it did that? Maybe not.
Right.
But it's all those, and again, just brainstorming, what can we do as pilots to go, I need to stop.
So that's
This is
a
the safe
great
thing to
point.
do. I need to stop because I'm on the ground. They could have just sat there and said, screw it, we'll leave the helicopter here till tomorrow.
Right, absolutely. Which we totally encourage them to do. That's our whole mission, especially for the safety department. But that's a great point. So we arm our employees with things like pre-flight risk assessment tools and support from, we have in our office here in Denver an operations control center 24/7 staffed with pilots to be support that they can radio in or cell call to anytime they have questions. And they're always supported while they're out there making these decisions. So the video perspective might seem like they're out there on their own at the football stadium. The reality is they're not. But how does that translate to your guys' point? What kind of resources do you have for pre-flight risk assessments? Does everybody use the I'm Safe checklist? Anybody enhance that for their own operations? Highly recommend it. There are other tools online you might want to look at as well.
Can I ask you a question? Was the patient that was in there, was he life or death? Was it in the next 20 minutes he had to be in surgery or something?
So the reality is it doesn't matter. Our pilots are insulated from information about the patient.
I see.
They simply do not know. All their PIC decision making is based upon the weather factors, the condition of the aircraft, and their ability to operate the machine safely.
So they don't even know.
They don't even know.
Interesting.
That's really great.
Yeah, that is a good thing.
Takes that pressure away.
Absolutely. So, and when they get a call, the crew goes into their quarters and makes preparations for the type of patient they're going to receive and transport. The pilot goes into a separate room, coordinates with the OCC to complete their pre-flight risk assessment, makes a call, siloed independently, and then off they go.
How long has your FOQA been in place?
So FOQA's been up since about 2010. We're going through a new iteration of the program right now where we're actually going to expand the type of recorders. So we're going to get a larger parameter set. The challenge we have in the helicopter world is weight and data fidelity. When I worked for an airline, we used to be able to record thousands of parameters, many multiple times per second off an Airbus airframe, let's say, and we had more data than we knew what to do with. In the helicopter world, we have very few data parameters we can record because we're forced to use lightweight recorder options and just different challenges we have with how spread out we are to retrieve the data. So it's an ongoing program right now, but we do have excellent buy-in. We're one of two focal programs that are certified for Part 135 air ambulance operators in the U.S. A lot of the major air carriers have FOQA, so we're on par with like the Uniteds, American, and Frontiers.
How have you been able to quantify your results?
So that's always a challenge in the safety world, right? How do you qualify as safe? When I go give a presentation to a class, so I'm going to, tomorrow to Fresno, California, when I go talk to those folks, and maybe we inspire somebody to think about, oh yeah, I need to brush up on my instrument what-if conditions. If this happens, what am I going to need to do? It's hard to quantify that if we avoided that incident or accident. We do track metrics to determine how many crew contacts we made, how many additional trainings we've done, things like that for FOQA in particular. But in the safety world, that's one of the big challenges we have.
How many no-go decisions do you make now versus, say, 10 years ago?
That's a good question. We don't track that in the safety department as a metric. I know the business group does, but to us, it's not something that we want to even measure because we don't want to give the illusion that we're tracking how many acceptances we're taking. So it's all about making the right decision when the right decision needs to be made. Is the emphasis we put on doing the risk assessment. One final question for you guys. The chief pilot there from Airbus Helicopters made a comment about the pilot not being the most qualified person to make their assessment of their go, no-go decision. What do you guys think about that? I go back and forth on it. I think if I'm a PIC of a single pilot aircraft, I am the person making the go, no go decision. I might have support from a company or fellow pilots on the airfield here, but if I'm making that decision, I'm the one making the go, no go decision. Do I need to make a no kidding assessment of my ability to fly and the weather conditions and how I feel and how the airframe is? Absolutely. So I disagree a little bit with what he said there about the pilot not being the most qualified person to make their assessment. The point he was trying to make was that there are oftentimes other resources available, especially in our world of commercial helicopter air ambulance. We have support that's available, but something to think about. Are you as a pilot the most qualified person to make that go, no go decision based on how you are? Or is it too easy to get blinded by, oh yeah, I can fly to that airport, I've been there a million times. Oh, there's a little iffy, no, I can still make it. You know, are you going to be sucked into the same kind of traps that this professional crew is sucked into as well? Sir?
One of the things that Chuck and I have developed over the years, and it's not 100% applicable to what you're doing, but you know, if you go back to when I learned to fly, you had these flight service stations sprinkled all the way across the country, and what we were taught back then, and what we taught back then was you make the decision to go or not go, you know, before you leave. Well, with the types of airplanes we're flying and the type of weather information we have on board, which is just massive, you know, we kind of developed the concept of making the continuous decision to continue or divert.
There you go.
Okay, so you go on the basis of what you see, and you know that what you can do safe, and you get halfway there, then you make a reassessment and decide to continue or to divert. But it's a conscious type of thing that is just rotating all the time.
Absolutely. What are the escape options at this point?
Exactly.
Well said. I love that. And that actually correlates well to our world as well. Yeah, absolutely. That's all flying in general.
Pretty critical in Colorado, flying over the mountains.
Absolutely.
So I think the answer to your question is the pilot's probably not the most person to be making that decision, but who else is going to make it?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
You know?
Exactly right.
So if we could come up with the idea of maybe if he had someone that, so here we are with the pilot, right? He's going, holy crap, this is getting bad now, what do I do? Could he get on the radio, no threat, hey, here's my situation, what do you think?
Right.
And you said you may have those resources there. He could
In our world, we
possibly-
absolutely do. Yep.
But now are they going to go, well, that guy's weak, you know, what's wrong with him? Well, he's questioning his own ability, blah, blah, which he did fess up and say,
Right.
hey. So,
yeah. Certainly, after the fact in this case, unfortunately, right? But we have a non-punitive policy about if anybody utilizes the all to go, when to say no, it's a completely no-fault policy. In fact, you're probably going to get a call from our CEO saying, good call, thank you so much for not putting yourselves, our airframe, our patients, our community at risk. This could have been over a neighborhood. This could have been who knows when, right? So the ramifications of the risk that was accepted, and thank goodness for the positive outcome that they had by making it back to base safely. But there's a lot of lessons to be learned off of this particular event. Another neat thing about programs like FOCLA is not just the one event we can learn from. This is one flight. The real value of these programs come when we analyze 1,000 flights out of the same base and go, 90% of our pilots are turning this way, why did this person go this way? Or why are we at this cruise altitude instead of this cruise altitude? We're able to make these determinations and get feedback to the pilots who may have a brand new pilot. And you transfer from the East Coast to the West Coast, that's how we did it over there, but here it's different. The Bengal Mountains or whatnot. So we need to kind of recalibrate. And FOCLA allows us to detect that. And not only that, but we share our data, de-identified and aggregate information with other air carriers, other airlines, other airport operators in the airspace who might have information or have questions about how we operate our airframes. Here's the data, check it out.
So I have a question on that. When it sounds like he fessed up right away and said, hey, this is what happened, we need to look at this. Had he not done that, how long would it take to process the data for you guys to find out that all went on?
Good question. So at this time, it probably would have taken a couple weeks before the card got full and we downloaded it. When this crew returned, they obviously reported this event, so the card got pulled right away. But typically we lag about a week or two before the data cards start filling up and we pull them off.
But you look at each flight?
Well, actually we have a computer system that looks at it. So it downloads all the raw data and looks for certain exceedances. Okay. So we have flag parameters if there's a rate of descent or high speed or high roll rate. This one I think probably triggered every flagged event that we had in the book.
So what,
Thanks. The other thing that kind of grabbed me a little bit is when Denver went into his boss or whoever it was and says, you know, I had a problem.
Right.
And he says, no, you didn't. You made it fine. Airplane's good. Okay, nobody got hurt. Nobody's died. He wasn't really listening to the pilot.
Excellent observation. So at our bases, we have chief pilot, or lead pilots, they're called. And their primary function is to serve as kind of the liaison between the chief pilot and the pilots at that base. And then also do some of the administrative work, you know, scheduling, those kind of things. So that particular lead pilot wouldn't necessarily be involved in an extensive debriefing of that event. From that person's perspective, they probably were like, well, here's a helicopter. You did a good job. And they also were probably sensitive to the fact that they were coming off shift. I think by the time they got back to base, they were in extended duty hours. And at that point, it's more about get on your rest, you know, get off duty, we'll talk about it tomorrow. So I don't fault the lead pilot there too much, but excellent observation. As a leader in an organization, they should have been like, what are you talking about? What happened? Let's sit down, let's go figure this out. Whether that was the right time to debrief the event, I'm not sure. In fact, I don't even think they realized just how much of Mr. Toad's wild ride they were on when they went on that. I think seeing the flight animation is what really hit it home for crew members.
so what's changed in your procedures now? I mean, each one of those by itself seems a decision that you may or may not make.
Right.
But there was several. So how now would that flight have not occurred?
So thinking back, there's quite a few. The primary one is the communication center offering up options to our crew members. They don't do that anymore. Say, oh, well, you're turning back. How about this? Can I sell you option B instead of option C? That's not part of the process anymore. That's probably the biggest one that would have allowed this crew to get home without experiencing what they did, aside from actions they could have taken themselves. Also, we have better triggers now in our OCC for monitoring these flights in real time. So they're able to see these occur, and we would have responded to it much quicker. Or we also have predictive analysis that if our aircraft is sitting somewhere and weather starts rolling in, they now have to coordinate with the OCC to complete a pre-flight risk assessment to determine, can we go? So we operate more like a 121 airline with a full-on dispatcher that says, are you okay for this flight? We're not required to by 135 operations, but we do. Those are the two big ones. There's several others, but those are the two big ones.
I think the weather programs in the OCC have gotten a major upgrade as well. I've been in there a few times when storms are coming through town, and they can actually pull the clouds up, spin them around, and they can see what the dynamic is of just the cloud of this thunderhead that's coming through. They can see exactly what's going on with it. That's been a big upgrade in the last year. So it's really cool that they can zoom in on a section of weather and tell you everything you ever wanted to know about it. It's really good.
And that's been a big challenge. The fidelity of the weather products available to our crews. We might be based 20 miles outside of a town, 50 miles away from any ASOS station, and they're trying to make weather determinations in the wintertime about, can I go to fly over to Grand Junction from here or not? So it gets challenging a lot of times with the weather products that are available.
Question, did Denver have the opportunity to ask for a second pilot to sit with them? It's all single pilot, right?
Right.
Could he have, at the beginning of the flight, called someone else and said, hey, sit with me here?
To take that transport?
Well, with him.
Choose not pilot.
No. One, that particular airframe doesn't have a seat.
Oh.
So that would have been limiting, unless you're doing training. And two, the weight restrictions we would have had to be able to transport a patient. And that's also, we operate single pilot. We don't operate any dual unless we're doing training.
The precision of that attitude indicator keeps bugging me. Is there an MAL issue? I mean, this was night, and is there something that he just disregarded, or in his mission accomplish mode?
So I wasn't part of the group that investigated this. So this is Mark's speculation here. But you know when you experience something, when you're driving a car and you get through an intersection, you're like, was that light red or green? And you're trying to remember, oh, of course it was green. And then when they put a camera in your face, was that light red or green? That light was green, I remember, right? I almost speculate that the attitude indicator comments that were made in the video and part of the debrief, I certainly believe in his mind were 100% accurate. That's exactly what happened. However, I don't 100% know for sure that that's actually what happened. I think it might have been to the point of thinking through what if I go in the soup, what happened. He might have been tunnel vision on the attitude indicator. He might have hiccuped a little bit or done something squirrely that made him cage and uncage it. And maybe that was enough distraction when he looked up in the soup, and now we're in trouble.
Or he may have
Or
thought
maybe
he was level in there.
Maybe he was.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
He was banking to level one.
Right. So as investigators, we take a different perspective on what the pilot recalls and what the data says and what the evidence says. But that's kind of a different topic of discussion. But regardless, he experienced some sort of attitude indicator issue that distracted him enough when he entered IMC, double IMC conditions. We had this Red Bull Air Show recorded.
It's going to be interesting that if they have the return to base like a $1,200 drone does, that's going to happen and it needs to happen.
Yeah.
Especially in your business.
Oh, exactly.
So the helicopter goes up safe altitude, goes to base, and really auto lands.
Yeah.
Almost.
It's
I don't know why that's not there yet, but
the technology is certainly there.
It's coming.
The question you have to ask yourselves: would you guys get on one of those airframes? The good thing about our business is most of our passengers are unconscious. They might not know, right?
For the medical crew.
Right, right, exactly, right.
Too bad about the flight nurses.
Right, exactly. So, yeah, is the future going to be a quadcopter with one clinician in the back that has a full suite of surgical instruments there that can be operated remotely by a physician in Pittsburgh, that is piloted by computers locally, that's augmented by a pilot sitting on a station in OCC that they'd be flying 20 flights around the country at the same time? What the future holds, I don't know. I think there's more social questions that need to be answered about that. Today, I wouldn't hop on an airline that was remotely piloted. Wouldn't do it. No.
Well, not remotely piloted, but like a nice quad. You know, you just hit the button, you're all screwed up, you lost your quad. You hit the button, it flies back and lands.
So
that needs to be on a chopper, and all it is a GPS locating.
Or an FMS.
It's really simple.
Here's my
to get it certified is like brain damage. Right?
Here's my comment to that. I know too many programmers to know that that's probably not a good idea just yet. You heard the bus coming, right?
Let me see those tires.
Right? Is it a Windows setup? That's a great question. Got to restart it halfway through. The blue screen. That's a good question. Well, any other questions or comments? Sir?
How do your pilots feel about the heavy oversight? I mean, from our perspective, listening to you, this is all great.
Yeah.
Are the pilots just as
Excellent
happy
question.
about it?
Excellent question. I'll tell you what I think, and then I'll turn it back on you and say, how do you guys feel about ADSB? So the response to the first question is, initially, pilots are like, oh my gosh, Big Brother's here. In fact, some of our recording units actually have a still camera that takes a series of photos every few seconds that can almost be strung into a video to augment data that's recorded by the device, so they can grab feed from the instrument panel as well. But when you tell a pilot that we're going to have a recorder on board your flight, the initial reaction is, great, Big Brother's watching, I got to fly perfect every time, can't make any mistakes. If I do, I'm going to get chewed out. The reality is, when we implement these programs, not just at AirMethods, but all throughout the industry, different segments of the industry, is one, we don't see that angel behavior that everyone says we're going to see. You put a recorder up there, they forget about it almost the second day, and we see some crazy stuff like this, right? Two, the reality is with programs like FOQA. FOQA is an initiative that is entered into an agreement with the pilot union, the FAA, and the company. So we are highly regulated to how we process the data. We can't just take the recording, view it off the SD card, and go smack the pilot upside the head with it. We have to run it through a process where it's analyzed and reviewed by union members to validate that it is an event, and any action we take is completely non-punitive. So any additional training the pilot might need, any additional counseling, it's all done off of their pilot record books. So actually what happens is the program runs for a while, one or two pilots get themselves in trouble, run through the process, and realize this is an awesome program. And they become the biggest proponents of processes like this. They go, oh my gosh, guys, I screwed up so much. You want to see my focal video? Check this out. Guess what happened to me? I got an extra free ride in the sim. I sat down with an instructor for another 2 hours that talked about this. I learned so much more about what my capabilities are and what the airframe can do. Check it out. And they're the ones out there championing these kind of programs. So it does take a little bit of the sales pitch. There's always that initial hesitation, but these programs are tried and true programs.
From everything you've said, it sounds like you guys have really put a lot of work into making it, not punitive.
Yeah.
And that's good.
There's a lot to do, but it's a worthwhile program.
Is your insurer partnering with you well in this program?
They're more interested in the fact that we have a whole suite of programs that are part of our SMS. FOQA is an element of that. But yes, we do get insurance discounts and things like that as being part of it. But they don't actually participate in reviewing the data or anything like that. In fact, FOQA data is actually protected by congressional mandate.
Except that the ultimate data, how many accidents? That makes it.
No, exactly. And if we have an NTSB incident or accident, then FOQA is kind of surpassed by that investigative process. That actually becomes data that augments their investigation. So this is kind of the precursor. This is the Dr. Heinrich's law of reviewing the multiple incidents and events that occur that are precursors to accidents. Like I said, this one should have been an accident, and we're taking a lot of initiatives and making a lot of change internally, both as an industry and as a company, to react to these kind of events through programs like FOQA and other programs we have. Any more questions?
Wow.
Well, thank you all for your time. I really appreciate it.
Fantastic. So, question. How many of you guys do a risk assessment on each flight? 0. How many, well, yeah, you guys better be, right? Because there's policy with Independence Aviation.
What are you talking about? Are you talking about a formal written process or just thinking through how's the weather, where am I going, what's the conditions?
I'm thinking
Any
a little
note
more
tabs?
written, formal app
Yeah.
or some sort of process.
Not every flight.
So, do you need to, think about doing one for every flight? Does it make sense to do that? Or what would the dimensions of the flight be where you would maybe take more of a formal process?
Passengers, weather front.
Time and type.
Time and type. Good.
I think
500
too,
miles.
as you do the, like the FRAT checklist, as you do that more and more, like here at IA, it becomes more familiar and you start getting more variables involved. So it feels comfortable after you've done 10 versus the first couple.
You know, I used to do a little bit of EMS flying, fixed wing, and it was transport type of stuff. It wasn't emergent by any stretch of the imagination. And I was given a flight one day, and I went down to the airport, and I really didn't feel like flying that flight that day. I just didn't. And of course, we always toss is, if you don't want to go, don't go. Well, I got to take a look at it, and I said, wait a minute, you're qualified, you got a good piece of equipment, it's your job, you're going to have to go. So I kind of developed the thing, if you have a spectrum of weather, and it's clear in a million, 5 knots of wind, okay, you're going flying. If you're on the other side, you got thunderstorms overhead, tornadoes, pestilence, plague, and everything else, you're not going, okay? Everything in between is where you're really managing your risk. And that's where a FRAT really comes into play and is extremely valuable, because then you can identify what are the risks, and then you can pigeonhole those things and make a decision on, can I handle each one of these, or what do I need to do to mitigate the risk of it.
Part of it is knowing what your personal minimums are also. You can review those pretty quickly. When you just do your weather review and review of airport conditions and en route conditions and things like that, you know what your personal minimums are. That's a pre-set up type of analysis that you don't necessarily have to write down if it's part of your process.
Sure.
But sometimes it's certainly important for something more formal to
How
happen.
many of you look at personal minimums on about every flight? Sure. It's part of the kind of the PAVE checklist that the FAA is promoting. Yeah, Chuck.
So Mark made the comment, is the pilot the best person to be making that decision? If you don't do a flight risk assessment, that could be the other tool that kept you from going that day. Because there may be that item over there that you didn't think about that day. So I think it's a great thing to do each flight personally.
Sure. There are apps available.
I was just going to say, think about the question in the other way. How many people would want somebody else making that decision for them? Different way to think, the same question.
Sure.
I think a lot of people would not want somebody else making the decision.
Good point. Again, resources, there are apps out there for flight risk assessment tools. And every one of you is part of this FAA Safety Wings program, and they have a FRAT on FAAsafety.gov that you can pull down and at least look at and see if it's something you'd like to incorporate into your flying routine.
AOPA has one online.
Yep, absolutely. Great, all kinds of great resources. And EMS helicopter ops is really a target of the NTSB over the last couple of years as well, because that accident rate has been pretty spectacular.
It is. We transport the general public, and we are under a lot of scrutiny for exactly that. In fact, just recently, last April, the FAA required helicopter air ambulance operators to mandate pre-flight risk assessment tools. We have been doing one for a number of years before that, but we took the opportunity to enhance ours and also build it into our electronic flight bag. So now we're also analyzing the data, the results of our pilots' pre-flight risk assessments to determine, did they make the right decisions? Do we need to ask the question differently to prevent them from accepting flights maybe we don't want them to, those kind of things. Again, a little bit different in a 135 commercial operation where the company's dictating how we want our airframes to be managed and operated, so we get to set the parameters. So it kind of alleviates the pilot a little bit. They say, oh, I don't want to, our CEO's name is Aaron Todd, I don't want to bend Uncle Aaron's metal, so I'm not going to take the flight. It kind of gives them an easy out. But we're talking, GA world, you guys are taking your own flights, oftentimes in your own aircraft, and what kind of tools can you use, checklists to make sure you are, verifying all those parameters? And maybe something you didn't really think about is on the checklist, and oh my gosh, this is a concern today, maybe I should wait a few hours before we go.
Great. Any other comments or discussion? Yeah, I'm going to move on a little bit to a couple of other things. The first is, this poor row back here didn't get to sign in. Pilots typically, usually it's half of the room, you hold the sign-up sheet on one half of the room. I'm going to follow that with a jar with a couple of raffle tickets. Grab one. We have one thing we're going to raffle, but I have a couple of other things I'm just going to give away to some very worthy folks. I did want to introduce some people here. First, we have a couple of Independence Aviation instructors. Bob Schenk is here, and Colin Prenger is here. And certainly you can bend their ears if you'd like to know anything about the Cirrus aircraft or anything like that. Of course, Chuck is here, and for those of you who don't know, the owner, president, chief bottle washer of Independence Aviation is Bob Stedman here, and truly part of the reason that IA has been awarded the Cirrus Training Center of the Year and Chuck's award is because from the top down we care about general aviation safety. And so Bob says things like, we don't want to do things the same old way that everybody else does it. We want to make things different. And what you're seeing is the fruit of that thought, this IMC club at IA. To give you a little bit of a history about it, Radek Wierzykowski went flying one time after he got his instrument rating, and there were a bunch of things that went on that he never learned in his training. And so he started to kind of get together with some pilot buddies of him, and this is how the IMC club started. A a year ago, November, EAA had become so interested in the program that they actually merged it in and made Raddick the manager of flight proficiency. It also gives the club, from a national, international basis, a lot more resources to generate high-quality films and scenarios and materials to help support the organization. So with the EAA,
I was gonna wait and take the last 5.
with the EAA, to be a member of IMC club at IA, you have to be an EAA member, or any IMC club for that matter. And so you get all the benefits that involve that membership. And then, of course, we took it a little bit further. Our IMC club at IA is a dues-paying membership organization. And for that, we do our monthly meetings. We meet the second Tuesday of every month, except for when it falls on Valentine's Day, and we figure that we'll arrange different tours and activities. I know, Carrie, you've been to the TRACON and I think Denver Center as part of the tours that we've done. Very valuable, fun things. We do that about once a quarter. We've got simulator scenarios that we've built. A lot of times they come from the scenario that we're discussing in this group. Bob has offered substantial discounts on the flight simulators that we have available. So yes, we are a Platinum Cirrus Training Center, so we have Cirrus simulators, but we also have something called a Touch Trainer by Fly This Sim, and that is configurable not only for the entire Cirrus line, but for Beechcraft, Bonanza, and Barons, and Cessna 172, 182 models, including retracts and things like that. We have this up and running. You can look as you want to walk around a little bit and see it's a 3-screen, touchscreen driven device, and it is a BATD, so it's a basic aviation training device that allows you to log certain things with it. We also have a dedicated Cirrus SR22 simulator that is equipped with the real Avidyne equipment. For those of you who maybe are flying something different, we have a partnership with Advanced Aviation Simulators over in TAC Air Hangar 8. So we can fly their AATD. And how many of you know about the crosswind trainer on the field? Yeah, there's access to the crosswind trainer, which I'm very much involved in. Did you do that with me? Was that fun? We had a great time. So again, you get a discount with an Independence Aviation instructor and Wings program credit. Potentially, if you're flying and doing things regularly, it can result in a sign-off for your flight review or instrument proficiency check. Okay. The whole idea is we don't really care about FAA currency. We're talking about being proficient and, you know, sharing information through this kind of hangar flying, which is awesome. Here's a picture of the devices, and again, the 2 sims are in this room. You can have a look at those, and then the crosswind trainer and the MFD.
David, back up one slide, please. Notice on the Fly This Sim Touch Trainer on the bottom it says Pilot Edge Live ATC Services.
That's cool.
Would you like to chat about that a little bit?
Sure. Anybody, you folks, have you heard about that? Okay. Pilot Edge, real guys, controllers that know all of the local nuances, all of the LOAs between ATC organizations, and you hook up via the web, put a headset on, and you're contacting ATC for clearances, practice approaches. How many of you know about tech routes? Power en route control, yeah, yeah. So most of what they're doing is on the west coast, SoCal, a little bit up to San Fran and out to Vegas. They just opened up this region as well, DIA and Aspen. You can be here and you can get an instrument clearance if you want. And who was it that did? Oh, it was Ken. Got his clearance here and flew the approach into Aspen, and it was all very realistic. So
Extremely realistic. I had a client in there one day, and it was early in the morning. We got in there, got on Pilot Edge, you know, and you actually put your iPad there, and you can watch your little blue dot fly around. You can take it to your track. We took off from Santa Monica, and we're out flying around and everything else, and they hadn't started up yet.
And Harrison Ford almost crashed you.
I couldn't raise them, so I, well, let's just go do some flying and everything else. And about 9 o'clock, there comes this announcement over the headset that Pilot Edge is now active for your flying pleasure, etc., etc. Oh, that's kind of cool. So I called the guy up and I said, this is Cessna 1234. We're just west of Santa Monica at 3,000 feet looking for advisory. He says, Roger, I have you right square in the middle of the LA Class B airspace. Fly west until you're out of it. It was great.
And you have to be careful. You start up the sim and you log into Pilot Edge, and where does the sim usually start you? Right on the runway, and they'll go, what are you doing on my runway, right? So you have to be careful with that.
Very, very realistic.
It's a lot of fun. So, you know, even if you want a little practice, if you're going out there, it's a great way to practice that ATC comms. We use it in really any of our certificates and ratings. But, you know, if you've got somebody that's very timid on the radio, this is a great way to get them started. So, a great feature. And you did mention iPad.
Yes.
How many of you fly with your iPad? Yeah, look at that. Okay, I'm teaching a couple of classes this week, by the way. But if you want real practice, you can fly this sim and practice with your iPad in real time. Invaluable and just awesome. So, you got that going on. The Crosswind Trainer, if you want to know more about that, just ask me. EAA, what's this cost? We are $35 a month or $350 a year. If you want to pay the year, then you get 12 months for the price of 10. Right? We have anywhere between 20 and 52% discounts on the sims, a 15% discount on IA Instructor once a month, and you do need to be a member of EAA, and that's $40 a year. If you're not, I can give you a 6-month free trial membership. So I've got, this explains the program, what we have here, and the benefits. So if you want to look at that, and then if you're interested to join us, there's a quick application. So any questions about what we're doing with that? Okay. Let's see. How am I going to do this? Who within the last month achieved their private pilot certificate?
One,
two.
Within the last month. Perfect. Is that great? And now you're moving into your instrument training? Let's give these guys a great And it just so happens that from Radek to you, we have a kind of a new look at a hood. So congratulations. It's great to have new pilots, new private pilots, and ones that are enthusiastic to move forward. That's cool. Did everybody get a ticket? Okay. All right. So let's see. Mark? I have today a MyGo Flight Bluetooth speaker to raffle off. It'll be Mark's fault. Yeah. All right, and the last four are 0919. Ah, very good.
Jay got it, nice.
Great.
Better check the number.
I better. All right, let's see. We've got 10, where'd my leader go? Do you want to talk about the Aspen approach? No, we're done. However.
Right, so I just got off a cruise ship like 2 days ago, and I've been
So,
checked out, so no.
Did you have anything that you wanted to say to the
Here's what I would
Thrones?
like to say. I'd like to thank Gary for hooking us up with Mark. What a
Absolutely.
fantastic
Yeah, very.
presentation.
Thank you, Gary.
Great moment. I'd just like to thank the guests for coming. We try to do what will best service you and help you with your instrument training, your world out there, things you come up with. You know, we get ideas from the clients, and then we try to tailor some of the seminars to those ideas. So you're welcome to join us, and we just try to help everybody be safer, better pilots out there. So thanks.
I'd like to add to that, Chuck, for those who are here for the first time, when you start coming to these, the regular membership is a very, very interesting spectrum of pilots. We have people who are working on their instrument rating to people who have retired from the airlines. General aviation pilots have been flying all their lives. So there's a really good sharing of ideas and thoughts and suggestions and experiences from across the entire spectrum. So, I think it's very synergistic. I think everybody gets a lot out of it and enjoys both giving to it and taking from it.
Yeah. Super. All right, well, there's a whole bunch of pizza left, and beer and other refreshments. Please feel free to stand around and chat with folks and talk with Chuck or Bob or me about becoming a member. We'd love to have you join us. Thank you.